I think the core emotion that drives virality is unexpectedness. When everyone's zigging, I'm zagging.
You will see certain brands or certain songs or ads, and all of a sudden all celebrities start posting about it and talking about it. When that happens, is that a paid campaign?
One day, like, a friend texted me and was like, hey, have you seen this? Like, Hailey Bieber just posted a picture of her dog on her bed and there's pillow cubes on her bed. And what's shocking is
Jay is honestly one of the greatest marketing minds I think I've ever met. He is behind over $250 million of revenue, over 1 billion views online, and has either owned or been responsible for a ton of different brands. From Pillow Cube to Color Run to Cold Case Ice Cream, like hyper viral brands, and it's all because of him.
we get pitched by tons of companies, and our first thing is like, send us product. And then we take that product and we will put it in one of the offices, and I just see what happens. If no one takes it or eats it or uses it, that's like a huge red flag to me. Before you get to money, just find out if people even want it.
If you had $5,000 today to your name, you lost everything, you had $5,000 bucks. What would you start to rebuild your wealth?
That's a great question. Some people might disagree. I would say,
Jay, thanks for coming on the podcast. This is going to be really fun. I enjoy getting so many different people on this podcast. Like yesterday, we were just talking about Mike and Zach. I had Mike and Zach on here, financial planners, very different. You are inside the marketing space, physical product space, been very, very successful. Kind of jump into those. But give people like a 30-second little bio, who you are, what you do, where you are, kind of a thing.
yeah. So love to do, I think kind of my two passions are marketing and product creation. So those are the things I love to do. Love launching businesses. That's definitely kind of a big part of my story. But yeah, started in product development, then went into viral marketing, helped launch a couple businesses and get a couple things going. And then eventually started an agency, and then that agency turned into launching our own brands. So yeah.
That's very cool. I'm excited to jump into it. So in every single podcast, we have 3 different sections. The first section, I let my followers ask you questions. So we pulled them. I'm going to rapid fire them at you. Then we'll talk through a lot of those different products, virality, marketing, dump into that. And then we'll do the last one's the same 7 questions every guest. So the questions the followers want to know. The first one, where do you get all your product ideas? Are these like yours? Are people coming to you? Like, how do you come up with products?
Yeah, it's a great question. Kind of both. I mean, we've done stuff that Pillow Cube was an idea that I had.
Cool.
It was something that I've created, and almost all of the ideas in Pillow Cube are stuff that I've come up with.
Cool.
Every once in a while, we've invested in or bought a company. And kind of used creatively, we have a methodology of how we kind of evaluate whether an idea is going to work and whether it's going to be able to grow and scale. So we use that same methodology to look at like, what should we partner in, invest in? So that's been a big piece of it. But yeah, a lot of it's from me. And I think a big thing that I'm constantly looking for is friction. Yep. I'm always looking for things where I'm like, I definitely have that kind of brain of like, oh, that's annoying. That's frustrating. Sometimes it's a little much because it's like, I think if you have that way of thinking, you then have to learn how to know what's worth chasing.
Yeah.
Because I think you can spend time being like, oh, I'm going to fix everything. And that's definitely just very difficult to do. You can't do everything. And so I think that's something that, especially in my earlier career, was probably harder because I was like, oh, what about this idea? And what about this idea? And I had to learn like, what ideas should I chase? But yeah, that's definitely kind of how I approach it. I'm just always looking for things that I'm like, oh, that's frustrating. That was Pillow Cube. It was just, I could never get a pillow that was thick enough. Even when you bought thick pillows, even when you bought stuff that was like, oh, this is for side sleepers, it was just never enough kind of thickness and enough volume. And so, yeah, just always looking for those little things in life that are like, oh, that drives me crazy. And then I evaluate whether it's worth going after.
And when you do that, I'm more just curious here. Are you like inside a think tank, 3D modeling, very high tech? Or are you just like duct taping stuff together, building gadgets and gizmos saying, yeah, I can go build this kind of thing? Like, what is the process for you?
Yeah, I would say more the duct taping. Like even with Pillow Cube, I created a sample out of some like scrap foam.
Yeah.
Had a seamstress that I knew sew me a cover, and then I was like using that one sample and like having friends come to my office and be like, hey, lay on my couch and like see what you think about this.
That's awesome.
Same thing with like ice cream. The ice cream actually came from I like borrowed a friend's food truck and just did hot chocolate actually out of the food truck. And then somehow it evolved into like hot chocolate's fun, but it was actually a caffeinated hot chocolate that we did like 3 years ago.
Cool.
And we were like, that's kind of fun, but I think there's broader appeal with ice cream.
Yeah.
The guy that I was working on the hot chocolate with was like an ice cream expert. And I was like, why are we doing hot chocolate? Like we should do ice cream. So yeah, I think that it's more that like, I'm not the 3D modeling. I have some team members who can do that. But usually what we're trying to do is really start with like, is this something people want? I think that's the hardest thing as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get to that point where people are giving you feedback on your idea, but it's also like the most crucial piece.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. Okay. Next question they had, have you ever had a product flop and how did you bounce back from it?
Oh, so many products flop.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's like the biggest lesson for me has been I've tried so many things, launched a lot of things. There definitely have been some like even businesses that didn't work and it's hard to come back. I think that's like the biggest challenge is you just got to get going. One of my big regrets, I had a company that did really well. It was growing really fast. It grew too fast and we just could not keep up with like things from the investment side. And so we eventually just shut it down. And it was hard. I wish I'd bounced back sooner. It was really hard to like, okay, I got to get going again. But it was a good lesson. It was a good lesson that like, okay, it's done. Time to move on. Time to do another thing. So
we'll jump into that more later because I'm excited to hear. I feel like something I would love to know in the physical product space, your scale up and scale down is so much quicker than almost any other business.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to jump into that later, but we won't hit that now. Is there one invention that you don't have time to chase? Looks like they're trying to steal an idea. Do you have an idea right now that you don't have time to chase is what they're going at? That's hilarious.
So many ideas. There's so many. There was like a moment, and if someone wants to use this, they totally can. There was kind of a time where I was looking into, and I haven't done a ton of software stuff, so that kind of made me nervous.
Yeah.
But I was kind of trying to rethink how business email works. I feel like especially now there's this whole like LinkedIn email game of like just constantly getting emails. Every single employee I have just gets, kind of pitched like, and they get the stupid pitches. They're like, oh, I talked to Jay and he said to talk to you, and so I was trying to think of how you could rethink business email to where it's more of a walled garden within your business. And people can't get in unless they either pay or they know someone. But yeah, as I went down that road, there were a couple people doing some things close. I was trying to think, another thing that I think a lot of business owners are frustrated by is I don't really know how my people are like interacting with software, using software, whether it's making them more efficient, less efficient.
Yeah.
I think now more than ever, we are busy coordinating work sometimes more than we're actually working. So I was trying to like play around with that. Like, how do you fix that? So if anyone wants that idea,
there you go.
Take it.
How important is social media in launching a product and what platform would you use to launch?
So super important. That's how we launch all of our things. I think social media is more, gives you more data feedback quicker than anything else that you can do. TV is working towards that. Radio is working towards that. Podcasting, advertising is even working towards that. And some people are making some great headway. But social media, you can just see like we watch when people stop watching our ads. So like we'll bring up what's called the retention curve. And we'll watch like, oh man, we lost everybody on that joke, or we lost everybody on this explanation. It's too boring. So yeah, you should be using these tools. And a lot of times I think people get scared to just do something. And so they're like, well, once I have a ton of money, it's like, grab your iPhone. We film stuff on iPhones all the time. Grab your iPhone, film something simple, throw it up as an ad, put $100 into it.
Yep.
You can use that for price testing, beta testing, seeing if people are willing to pull out a credit card. Sometimes we'll even do stuff and send them to a website that's not even really working, just to see if they'll pull out their credit card. And then we're like, oh, sorry, it's out of stock. social media is just the greatest tool for entrepreneurs to really know whether they should be chasing what they're chasing.
And it's so inexpensive. Like
Yeah.
launching a product 15 years ago, 20 years ago,
Oh my gosh.
you can do it.
Yeah.
Today, you really can chuck $100 in an ad, get
Yeah.
$2 a lead, $3 a lead, get 30, 40 of them. Yeah, it's not a great sample size, but it's something.
Yeah.
Where you couldn't have dreamed of doing that 15, 20 years ago.
Well, and if you go after you can go after penny views on Facebook. You can even do cheaper than that if you want to go to like other countries, and you can get so many impressions for such a small amount of money. So that's always for me where I start is I try to force myself to like, don't spend too much time sitting in a room just ideating and not asking anyone anything. So I always like one of the things I learned at one of the companies that I worked at when I was younger was a lot of the time the executives would sit in the conference room and they would decide what people wanted.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, we can like find out what people want in 10 minutes. I can do a survey with 1 million of our customers. Why are we not listening to them? And so I think that that's a really crucial thing for social media. It's such a great tool.
Yeah. It's also like I run social media like a business. And I think that's why I've seen success quickly is because I was first a business owner that like understood stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was like, let's just apply like data metrics to it. And it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Like you have to put good content out there. You've got to like, people actually have to want it. But I will talk to influencers and they'll be like, oh, my average watch time is 12 seconds. At 12 seconds, I did this. I'm like, no, average watch time and your retention curve are completely different.
Yeah.
You can't take an average watch time, assume that's the point that people are falling off because the vast majority are actually at 2 seconds because that's just every video. But then a lot of them are actually at 22 seconds, but you're fixing in the middle. Like the more data that you can get, the better, no matter where your business is. And so it's interesting in social media how illiterate people are in the business world and social media. And I see it. It's the exact same thing. So that's really cool.
It's sometimes we work with clients that have huge companies. It's amazing how little they know about social media and how it works. So pretty amazing.
So we had a bunch of people just say, will you mentor me? That's hilarious. But what does your employee structure look like? How many employees do you have? Like, do you have young people coming in that are like learning their way up? Walk me through like your business structure a little bit.
Yeah. So we do have young people. We try and have, opportunities for people to come in and learn. Our biggest kind of person or personnel company is Creatively. Creatively is like almost 35 people. The brands are all really lean. I think that's like my focus right now. We're building a new brand that's a testosterone product, and it's called 21 Again, and we're trying to keep that under 5 people.
Jeez.
So we're trying to. I think that's like something that I notice with consumer brands that is different right now. Is like the best consumer brands are thinking about like revenue per employee all the time. So.
That's mind blowing.
Like we have a client that does probably about $350 a year, and he has 50 employees, so 350 million. So he's like constantly thinking like, okay, I'm like 7 million per employee. I think that's a shift from technology brands or like SaaS where you just have gobs of people, and brands there's a lot of kind of brand owners who are launching new brands who are talking about like, brand that does 100 million with 5 people. Like, is that possible? And with AI, I think like that's kind of the next Common Thread Collective. I don't know if you ever have seen Taylor, but he thinks that in the next 5 years, there will be brands that are between 100 million and 1 billion with just a single person. So,
and it's starting, I mean, they're not using AI and I hate to even bring them up on the podcast, but I think I watched a podcast one time and it was, they were dissecting different brands. And one of the examples, like case studies they did, was OnlyFans.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they had like 20 employees and were doing billions and billions in revenue because it was a tech subscription software that he didn't lean into the SaaS model. He said, let's see how lean we can do this and just do it. But more and more companies are doing that. Like you don't need to put 200 people in a seat. You just need a couple people really good at what they do, and then they're just pulling levers. And because of social media, you can get millions. One person can get 1 billion views if you have the budget for it.
So our biggest brand is like 14 people. I mean, we really try and stay with AI. I mean, we're using that, and I just look at, Shopify. If you were a brand 15 years ago, Shopify would have been 10, 15 devs. Like that's what people I know who were doing brands then, that's what they had in house.
Wow.
Kaye was one of kind of the early ones here in Utah. And
Yeah.
just the amount of money they spent on software was insane. Now Shopify does all of that. What our one designer can now do with AI and Midjourney and all that stuff is, what 10 people used to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing for people when they're launching. It goes back to the social media thing. You have to be able to kind of learn these tools and do a lot of stuff on your own, and have people who are really nimble. So
I also think it's encouraging for the everyday person that it's more doable today than it ever has been.
Oh yeah.
Like you really can, single person, after your 9 to 5, spend 3-4 hours a day, wear a ton of different hats. You're gonna have to research like crazy, use AI, become a marketer, figure everything out. But you can launch brands and go test it and get to $1 million by yourself.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, I've got something. How do we actually scale this and turn this profitable and make this really work? And you couldn't have dreamed about that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So
no, it's so true.
Last question from them. We're going a little bit long on these, but this is a good one. So I want to ask you, what is your number one tip for networking? How have you networked into so many opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the biggest thing that I've learned, and something I wasn't as good at when I was younger, was really try to give. And I think a lot of young people, it's kind of immediately like, hey, what can you do for me? And I usually say, wait until you hit that point where they're kind of saying like, dude, what can I do for you? Like, you keep helping me. And I think that's just like such a mind switch, but it's like such an amazing hack that a lot of people don't think about. My little brother got to have this awesome opportunity where he met the commissioner of the NBA. And I was like, dude, don't ask for anything. And he's not that way anyways, but like, don't ask for anything, send him a gift. And when he got to the end, Adam Silver, right?
Yep.
Was like, I've never once done one of these. It was like through his law school, where the person didn't ask me for a job at the end. You're like the first person. And like, it created a relationship. They still talk to each other now.
That's so cool.
And I think that's like such a great example of, if you just don't ask for stuff, but it's amazing how many people are like, can I have a job?
Yep.
And it's like, dude, that's kind of the worst way to go about it.
Giving without the expectation of reciprocity is a lost tool. I was in, I've shared this story before. My uncle runs in a circle that's very successful.
Yeah.
And he invited me to an NBA game to sit in his box. Inside this box, there was probably 4 billionaires in there. I was, at the time, a college student, just some nobody that was just like riding the coattails of my uncle saying this is awesome kind of a thing. But every single one of them walked up to me at one point inside that box. They're like, oh, who are you? Super nice, like nicest people in the world. I was like, oh, Braden Shaw, like my uncle over there is who I'm with. And every single one of them told me a story about my uncle from way back when, where he gave something to them and it led to their friendship. Like one of them was like, your uncle, I didn't have money to buy a suit to go to an interview. He bought me a suit when we were like college roommates or something. And to this day, I remember that. And now we're in business together. And it's like,
dude, that's crazy.
Billionaire after billionaire after billionaire. Like my uncle literally made a life off of just giving. Like, I'm just going to give, never expect anything in return. And eventually people will turn around and say, dude, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
And if you have enough of those in your back pocket, but then you can't even think that way. Like, don't do it for an expectation, but it is the ultimate networking hack that is a lost skill. I think that's so wise.
No, it's so true. It's amazing how, and I think that's a commonality you see amongst really successful people, is people assume like, oh, these people are just take advantage of people. And it's like, that is not what I've seen. Like, successful people are always givers for the most part. Like, there's definitely exceptions, but like for the most part, they're people who give. They're always trying to help others. And it's amazing how that reciprocity comes back to them, because they're not expecting anything. And so, anyways.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so I want to jump into kind of your story. So let's go like day one. Did you go to college?
Yeah.
Okay, what'd you graduate in? What was your first job? Like, walk me through those beginning days.
Yeah, so went to BYU.
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs. Went to BYU, studied entrepreneurship
Cool.
in the business school.
Yeah.
Ended up graduating only because I studied entrepreneurship,
Love it.
because I was already starting businesses in college. And so my homework was basically like work on my business. And
I
so
wish I would have done it.
it
I was
made a
too
lot of
scared.
sense.
I did finance because I was like, if I graduate and never need a job and they see that, like I'm
Yeah.
hosed.
Yeah.
But I wish I would have done that. That's cool.
It did make it more more difficult at times because people are like, so you're like an entrepreneur, why aren't you just
Yeah, you don't want to be
starting
here.
a business? Yeah. So after that, so I was starting some stuff, graduated in 2008, wasn't a great time to graduate.
Yep.
So I eventually got a job at Vivint. I got a job before I graduated in customer service. And then while I was there, I kind of worked my way into product development.
Cool.
So was able to get that, which was awesome. Super fun to see how that business scaled. At the time that I joined, it was Apex Alarm. And so it was really amazing to watch Todd Peterson just do what he does. And he's an amazing entrepreneur. So it was great to kind of learn just by osmosis. It wasn't like I was interacting with him constantly. But I got to have some interactions and help with some things. And product for us at the time was really new. So it was really cool to see like, oh, these guys are going from being like a reseller to like becoming a tech company. And so super amazing experience. I was there for 4 years, got to help with the rebrand, kind of be involved in that, see what that was like. Then I left and helped start a company called The Color Run.
Yeah.
Which was the first 5K with colored powder. We were trying to figure out how to scale up and grow. And we're trying to like figure that out. At first we were like going to colleges and just handing out stuff. And then we started to make content. At the time on Facebook, every single friend you had saw every single post.
Yeah.
So very different. It was actually in 2000, I think end of 2012 when that changed. So we launched in kind of like November, December of 2011. And then in 2012, we were having events and we started doing these videos that just went crazy viral. For one of them, we actually, one of the videographers knew this new band called Imagine Dragons that no one had ever heard of. And we were able to do the video with their song and licensed it for like nothing. And then right after that, they blew up and we were able to get quite the deal. So yeah, it was really fun to see Color Run. Just, I've never seen something grow that fast. Like the growth was just insane. We were just opening events and we would sell out, 20, 30, 40,000 tickets in an hour. And tickets were like $50 a pop. So it was just so crazy. We were just trying to figure out how fast can we go?
And profit margins decent on that in-person events.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't bad trying to get personnel.
I mean, it was crazy
all over the country. That seems like a pain of a business to run, in all honesty.
No, it definitely. I think I didn't realize how hard events were because it kind of was like when you can get 40,000 people to like a 5K, or 20,000 people. Like we did 25,000 people, and we ended it like on the steps of I can't remember what that's called, but it's where Rocky runs up in Philly. And so we like ended the race running up those stairs. Like it was crazy. We were doing stadiums. We were calling up stadiums and just like, yeah, how much? Sure, $100,000, whatever. Like we'll book it. And a lot of times we were just booking the parking lot. Like we're like, we don't even want to go in the stadium. We don't want to make a mess. So yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy to see, and I didn't realize just how hard events were because it was kind of this like this once in a lifetime black swan kind of experience. And so but really awesome. It was really fun to learn. That's kind of where I got into video and video marketing. One of the people that I met while working at Color Run, me and him started making YouTube content together. And that started to do really well. And so I did that for a while after I left Color Run. And then was just kind of like consulting, working on different projects, and then eventually said, I really want to start like an agency. I was tired of kind of always doing stuff on my own. In that time, I also like did other stuff, tried other things. We launched an event company that was essentially like Wipeout in a 5K. Which was way harder. And that was the one that like kind of scaled so fast, and we were trying to raise money and just never could raise money and ended up shutting it down. So yeah, a lot of lessons. I think kind of in that period, I then also was like launching stuff, trying stuff. And I think one of the things I learned in that period was I would launch stuff, and then I would like, before I really even let it get going, I'd kind of move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so I'd kind of jump to the next thing. I have friends who they'll come and they'll kind of pitch me a new idea every like 3-4 weeks. I'm like, dude, you're not looking for a better idea. Like, you just need to do something.
Yeah.
Tons of these ideas. Like Pillow Cube, everyone I showed was like, that's the stupidest idea, dude. Like, that's so dumb. People I showed who were in the bedding industry were like, dude, you don't understand. Like, no one makes pillows that way. It's really expensive. It's really hard. Everyone just throws a bunch of crap in a bag that's left over from making mattresses. That's why pillows are profitable. So yeah, like I think that's something that I kind of learned in that period. Was that I even have a partner, my partner Josh, who is kind of over all of our brand. He does all of our design stuff. We were just like launching stuff, and we look back and we're like, dude, a lot of those ideas were like actually really great ideas.
Really?
One of them was an app that we called Wick Walk, like way back in the day. This was like 2015. And it was basically, you would tell it how much time you wanted to waste and what you were interested in. And then it would pull in content from like every different social media platform based on those parameters. Like, I want comedy that's 5 minutes or less. So if you're like going to the bathroom and you just want to waste 2 minutes, and we like got it going, and then we're like, oh, here's another idea.
Jeez.
And so I think I learned in that period, like, hey, you got to stick with stuff. Because that's usually where you see the value. It's not like there's kind of this matrix I always tell people, like idea on one side and execution on the other, and they both have to be great, not just one. It's not a false dichotomy. So
do you feel like it's in your personality? I feel like the idea and the execute are usually two different people. Have you grown to learn? Like, do you have the execution person and you're the idea person, vice versa? Or do you wear both hats on your ideas?
I think I definitely have the people who help me execute. I think if I have a strength, it's that I have an idea and I immediately start.
Yeah.
Like, I don't second guess myself. I don't like Josh will always laugh. He's like, you'll have an idea on Friday, and like on Monday we have a business. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I already like put some money into it, started an account, legal's going. And he's like, dude, this is crazy. But usually before that, it's like I'm testing that idea the second I have it. So I have that idea, and I have a process that I go through for testing ideas. But once I know something works, I'm just like, nope, we're not going to think about it. We're not going to like sit and debate. Let's just go. Like, I had this idea for this ice cream thing, and it was like, everyone was like, oh, that's cool. And like 2 weeks later, it was like branding, we're just going. And I think that's, again, if there's like one lesson for people who want to be an entrepreneur, find an idea that you're excited about, passionate about, and just get going. Like, stop looking for the perfect idea. There is no perfect idea. Just find a problem that you're passionate about solving and just get going. So,
okay, there's a couple pieces I want to pull out of there. First one, you don't have to share me your exact way of testing it, but what is your like market research testing of an idea? If someone's out there is like, dude, I've had this idea for 5 years. I just don't know how to decide if it's actually good. What would be like those 4 or 5 steps to help them? Yeah.
No, I share this a lot, so I'm happy to share it. So it's 3 steps.
Okay.
So the first one is just get feedback from people. It depends on what you're doing. Physical products are very easy to get a prototype. So it's definitely a benefit. Even if it's a software, though, just map it out, draw it, super basic wireframe. So try and get to the point where you can have a prototype, and then just get in front of people. And what I do is I say, I want you to tell me the things you like and the things you don't like. So I invite them to get over, kind of the friend stuff where it's like, oh, it's amazing. I love it. You're so great. I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I just immediately say, like, what do you like? What do you not like? And then I'm looking for things that are, things I can use in marketing. So for example, with Pillow Cube, some of the feedback was, it's ugly. It's weird looking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I think I can actually use that. Like, that might not actually be bad, but some people are like, hey, it's too soft. It actually doesn't support my neck. I'm like, okay, I got to fix that. So that's kind of step one. Just get out there.
Family and friends kind of a thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, one of the things I do at Creatively, anytime we get pitched by tons of companies, and our first thing is like, send us product. And then we take that product and we will put it in one of the offices, and I just see what happens. Like, if someone sends this product and I'm literally putting it on a table, and we try and rotate it so people aren't like tired of getting too much stuff. But if no one takes it or eats it or uses it, that's like a huge red flag to me.
Yeah.
Now it might be like, oh, that's the wrong audience, but I try and find the right audience. So we'll ask them like, who are you going after? If it's an older people, I'll give it to like neighbors. Like, hey, can you use this and tell me what you think? And so that's like test number 1. Just like, do people even like it?
Yeah.
Test 2 is I give the product to people, and then pretty quickly I ask for them to give it back to me. So like with Pillow Cube, once I started to see that people were like, that's weird, then they'd lay on it and be like, dude, this is amazing. Actually, never mind. Like, this is great. And that was the feedback I was getting. I made 20 prototypes and I gave them to 20 friends. And then like 6-7 days later, I called and said, hey, I need that back. Like, I want to try, and no one would give it back to me. So that's kind of like the second test is like, and I've done this with the testosterone thing we're testing right now. Like, I've given that product to people and then been like, hey, like, I know I told you I would give you another bottle for month 2. I don't have it. And people are like, can I buy it? Like, where could I get it? So that's kind of I think a key thing that, like, before you get to money, just find out if people even want it. Mm-hmm. If people are like, oh yeah, for sure, here, you can have it back. That's like a big problem.
Yeah.
That again, we're not testing whether someone will pull out their credit card. And then that's the third test. Any way you can, go to a mall and pitch people in person, which I've done, and then just been like, hey, will you buy this? Like, would you buy this from me? Any possible way, Kickstarter, if it's a SaaS product, just saying to people like, yeah, we have it ready. Will you pay for it? Try and get them to sign a contract, like whatever you can do to get someone to pull out a credit card, because that is like the ultimate test. But I think the other two help you get there, because you should be iterating after each thing. You should be saying like, okay, I mean, even Pillow Cube, the original version was a cube. And then once we launched it, everyone was like, man, I love it when I'm on my side. But when I roll to my other side, I like fall off this cliff. And then I'm like, oh, dang it. I wish it was wider. And so that was like product 2 was just, okay, widening it.
Yeah.
And then all of the products have really come from just talking to customers. A lot of people are like, I put a pillow between my knees. And it's like, oh, well, what do you not like about the pillow? Putting a pillow between your knees. And they told us, and then we fixed those things. So I think that, again, is just a lost art of like, you got to talk to people. It's so hard.
Yeah.
But if you get past it, like, I don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
I was going to say, when you're sitting there saying going to the mall and pitching it, I was like, I don't know if I'd do that. Like,
yeah,
take some guts to just show up to University Mall and say, you buy this from me?
Yeah. But I think even with family, like, just go to anyone and just see if someone will pull out their credit card.
Yeah.
See if you can get someone to buy it. Even selling stuff, like sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace, like see if someone will purchase it, even if it's used, whatever you can do. So those are the 3 things that I use to kind of find out if I have an idea or not. So,
okay, next question I have for you. Do you believe that you can create virality, or do you feel like it's this algorithm that you can't control? Obviously, you have a whole business around it, so I feel like I know your answer. But what are like the pieces that you believe create virality? How are you able to keep replicating this?
Yeah, so I and that's honestly something that from creatively kind of client standpoint, there are definitely times where we're saying we're going to go a little more predictable, we're going to do paid, but there is a portion of paid that is viral.
Yeah.
For sure. And so I think there are principles of virality that you can look at, and you may not be, batting 1,000, but you can be very, very accurate most of the time. And so I think that's like a big piece of it, is understanding what truly creates virality and what doesn't. I think a lot of people, even in big agencies, think that like shock value creates virality, and then they'll try stuff and it not work. And so the things that I've seen is, I think the core emotion that drives virality is unexpectedness. It's doing something that people are not expecting you to do. And so I think that's like kind of my core. I would even say from like product development all the way to marketing, I'm just trying to do kind of, when everyone's zigging, I'm zagging.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly looking at like those trends of like okay, everyone's going here, I'm going to go here. And that's really what virality is if you can do something that when you tell people, they're like, I was not expecting you to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't. Even your guys' reactions when I told you about the video with the little people,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, I wasn't thinking you were going to go there.
Yep.
And that's that core emotion that you're constantly trying to find in virality. You're always trying to do something that people are not expecting. And then there's other ways that you can do it or kind of build on it, I guess I would say, so that you get the sharing, you get people talking about it. But I think a big part of it is, especially for a brand, the hardest part is always that fear of like, I don't, are people going to be mad? Are people going to be offended? And it's like, that's something you kind of have to get over if you want to do virality.
Interesting.
And what's shocking is almost never, you never want to do it just to be controversial. Like, hey, let's hurt everyone's feelings. One of the things I tell brands is like, I would almost never go political. As a brand, I just don't think it adds any value. But a lot of times, like what we're dealing with is like, hey, we're trying to do something that is unexpected, and there is a potential controversy, but there's a way to avoid it. There's some rules that we have to make sure that we're not going too far down that road. But as a brand, I'm just always shocked how people are so worried about like, oh, what if this feels off-brand? That's another thing we hear all the time. And Phil Knight said it best. Until you are doing over $100 million a year, you don't even have a brand. So
that's a good one.
Don't be so worried about it. I'm surprised how many little companies are like, oh, I don't know. It's like, dude, no one even cares. Like you're a $3 million a year brand. No one is worried about it.
So like you take one of these physical products, you're trying to get that unexpectedness, shock value, force virality. Are you putting 10 different versions of unexpectedness out there, chucking a budget at all of them, A/B testing until you find one, then you lean into it and create 5 iterations of it? Is that basically what you're doing?
And like hundreds.
Yeah.
We're I mean, before a creatively campaign even ever launches, we've tested everything. Like we've tested intros, hooks, outros, what are the best jokes. We had one video that had an amazing joke about Bill Cosby. It was talking about how there's like lots of toys, or there are lots of things in life that we used to think are safe for kids, like lawn darts or Bill Cosby. And people there was a huge reaction. But we tested that and tested it without, and the conversion was better with the joke. And so for us, it was like, okay, people might be frustrated or mad, but it's driving what we want. And that's always what I'm trying to push people to do. Sometimes clients, they'll come in and it's like, like we had one client who just really wanted to make a statement about a political movement at the time. And it was like, guys, are you running a business or are you running a political campaign? Like, you got to decide. And the performance suffered because they just insisted on like, we have to have this in there. And it was funny because it was like, but your audience is not that group. Like, your audience is very, one side, and you're making a statement that is very much the opposite side. And the performance was like way worse because of it. So that's what I think is interesting for a lot of brand owners. You gotta know what controversy to create.
And it's easier than ever for people to A/B test. Like going back down to the side hustler that's like, I have this idea. I opened up Shopify. I spent 30 days getting my store up. Now I need to like go launch something. Like ClickFunnels, Go High Level, Salesforce is a little more complicated, but every single funnel website has an A/B tester naturally built into it. Where you can sit there on a funnel level and be like, I want to try this color versus this color. Run with 100 people to it. Which one's converting better? This one is. Okay, let's try this word first, then this word first. Like, it's literally built into it. Well, they'll 50-50 split it and give you all the stats, and you just say, this one, let's go again. And so I was talking to a brand the other day, and he was in the marketing space, and he was telling me his model of creating ads is he just had like 20 guys, women, girls, boys, inside this room, and every single day they'd all show up at 8 a.m. and they'd all build an ad from 8 to 10. At 10 o'clock, everyone would get, I don't know, $1,000, $10,000 for their ad. So he'd run $20,000 for that ad. He'd take whoever had the best converting ad, send 19 of you home, you're the winner for the day. we're going to run your ad for the next 8 hours, stay around. And then they just run that all day. And the next day, the same 20 people would show up, say, that dude won it. And so they just take his ad basically, and all 20 of them would tweak it. And then they'd run that ad for an hour or 20 ads for an hour, figure out which one's the winner, and then run it for 8 hours. And they did that day after day after day. He's like, 6 months later, I had the best performing ad like we'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Simply because we were doing these tiny little A/B tests, testing it with a micro audience, finding the winner, dumping gasoline on it, and rinse and repeating the next day.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's a huge company. I'm like, yes, they had 20 people. You could do that by yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Like you could spend 2 hours in the evening just changing colors or jokes or hooks or call to actions or whatever, saying tomorrow I'm going to run these 4, put $20 at each of them.
Yep.
And then like, it is so easy. It's so simple.
Yeah.
You just have to take the time to learn marketing, learn this stuff, and then just go do it. But the more and more AI gets involved, the more and more tech becomes more simple, plug and play, build and block kind of structure.
Yeah.
It's just, I hope what people get from this is you haven't even given us numbers, but I'm just going to use numbers, hundreds of millions of products of sales. But at the same time, the exact thing you're doing, they can do at any scale.
Oh, totally.
And then just start scaling it up.
Yeah. And I think that is that core thing that every time I meet someone with an idea, it's like, dude, just start it. Like you're trying to figure out all these things that you're not going to know until you start it. Like Cold Case is a great example where like what I thought Cold Case was going to be.
Tell them what Cold Case is. I know we talked off camera. What is Cold Case?
So Cold Case is our ice cream company that we originally launched as a D2C brand. Originally, and we still do this, but it's not kind of the core business anymore, but it was originally like this box of ice cream, 6 pints. It was $150. It came with games. It came with like this whole experience that you could have at home. And so we had like a card game. We have like guessing games of trying to guess what's in the flavors, because like the flavors are pretty wild. It came with like a golden shovel spoon, evidence bags, like this whole experience. And it was awesome. Like people loved it. Celebrities posted about it. But then as we got into it, it was like, oh, this is a retail play. And so we still do that box for like corporate gifting and stuff.
Yeah.
But now like just the pints themselves are going into retail. And so when I first started it, I thought it was going to be very different. I thought it was going to be like, we're going to have tons of people order this box. But like shipping prices went up, a lot of things changed. And so we had to pivot. But like, that's again where I think people get stuck, and they just are trying to figure, well, let me figure this out. And it's like, you will learn all these things the fastest if you just get going. Like stop trying to find that perfect idea. Just do something.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times once you get it out there, it will get molded and shaped by a bunch of people. And that's, again, kind of that example I use of like, whenever we have a client who they're iterating or their product development in a closed room, I'm like, dude, get people in, focus groups, anything. Stop worrying about the perfect methodology. Just get out there. Start talking to customers. Ask them what they like, what they don't like. So that's, again, I think kind of that core thing is just, like you said, you can take $100, $10, and just find out what people are thinking. We've even done like Facebook lead forms and just ask people a question. Like, are you happy with X product? And you can go get 1,000 responses really cheap. So yeah, I think that is kind of like the core lesson of my life is like, just get going, just start it.
Okay. I've got 2 more questions you on your personal journey that I'm interested in. Then we'll go through the 7 questions.
Okay.
You just reminded me of one because you said celebrities were posted about it.
Yeah.
I've always wondered this. You will see certain brands or certain songs or ads, and all of a sudden all celebrities start posting about it and talking about it.
Yeah.
When that happens, is that a paid campaign? Like, do you ever seek out celebrities saying, hey, I'm going to run this ad set. We need to go get a couple celebrities to also post about it simultaneously to force virality. Like, are you doing a holistic approach of like paying off celebrities while doing ads, while running organic? Or do you think most brands really do just go viral and these celebrities are picking it up on their own? Does that make sense?
No, totally. I would say there's probably both, but I think, in my opinion, usually the best ones are ones where you're not doing too much of paying.
Interesting.
Pillow Cube's been really fun because we've seen a lot of celebrities like end up using it, and we never knew. Like, I remember one day, like, a friend texted me and was like, "Hey, have you seen this? Like, Hailey Bieber just posted a picture of her dog on her bed, and there's pillow cubes on her bed." And so I like went and looked it up, and I was like, "Holy crap!" Like, Hailey Bieber bought a bunch of pillow cubes, and then they had a documentary come out about like a concert that Justin did, and the opening shot is Hailey Bieber sleeping on a pillow cube. And for me, that was like, that's crazy. But we didn't do that. We didn't pay her. We didn't.
As a brand, can you then take those photos or videos and use them, or do you have to reach out? Is that legal? I don't
Yeah,
even know.
you usually need to reach out. So
Yeah.
that's like where it can be tricky. But like, depends on Instagram. You can repost the story
Yeah.
and kind of reshare it. You usually can't post it in your feed. And so you got to be careful. But like, a lot of that is just amazing proof.
Yeah.
And that's something we've used for Pillow Cube, because like a lot of celebrities have bought it and talked about it, and we didn't pay them. So we've done like almost no paid promotions. I think there are definitely people who have kind of paid. Like Prime is probably a good example where they've paid a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you can do both, kind of different tools for different reasons. But I think a lot of times the really great ones are just like celebrities are like, "Oh, I found this product and it's actually amazing."
That's cool.
And I think influencers has shifted too. Like, influencers and celebrities are not driving revenue like they once did, but they still drive a lot of awareness.
Yeah.
Like, we had Kim Kardashian posted about Cold Case. We didn't pay her. Someone that we knew gave it to her. But she, like, it did not drive tons of revenue, like really hardly anything.
Yeah.
But investors called, like potential investors called, and were like, "Never mind, I'm in." And you're like, okay. Retailers saw it and thought it was really awesome.
Yeah.
So it's kind of figuring out what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do.
Cool.
So,
Okay. Another question I had for this is, you're giving a masterclass right now. If anyone ever wants physical products, like, just keep watching this over and over. You have a product, you've duct taped it through to prototype. How would like an average person go source the creation of that product?
yeah.
Like, you probably have factory connections, but like when you're first starting, how would you bootstrap the creation of a physical product?
Yeah. No, that's actually a great question. I think I got stuck on it. Like, even knowing a lot of brands, like I had to reach out to a lot of friends who like had product companies that we'd worked for and say like, "Hey, now I got to make this pillow. I don't know where to make it." And so it's definitely something we've learned over time. So that's like one place I would start, is try and find a small startup that's like 10 people or less, and try and see like, hey, who does your product sourcing? You know, something that's non-competitive, and ask them like, where would you go? Who do you know? There's some great agencies that will take those people as clients. There's one here in Utah that we love called Shift Global. They're awesome. So I think that there's kind of that route. Also, just like going to Alibaba, see what's similar. It's a lot of legwork. I mean, that's the people who are experts at it are experts because they've spent 30 years flying to China, meeting factories, walking through factories, checking and seeing like, okay, is this a quality factory? Do their employees look happy? Do they treat people well? Do they make good stuff? So it is hard. I think that's the hardest piece that I've still, rely on experts for. But like another thing that I would say is you'd be shocked how much can be made here in the US. It will be more expensive. But like in the early days of Pillow Cube, we were calling up, like I remember just going through the phone book, so to speak, like going through Google Maps and being like, "Oh, this guy makes foam." And I'd just call him up and be like, "Hey, do you make like pillows?" And they're like, "Ah, no, we do upholstery, but this guy makes pillows." I call that guy up. "Hey, do you make pillows?" Yeah. Come up to my factory. There was a guy in Murray that helped us. There was a guy in Salt Lake, and he was like making stuff for Purple. He was making stuff for a bunch of people. And he's like, "Yeah, let me just kind of walk you through." And he made some samples for us. And so, like don't think that there's some magic process. A lot of it is just like I said, the people who are great at it, they spent 30 years, just hitting the pavement and calling people. And it's amazing how much that too can help. Like we were calling up We would just call a bunch of people and find like, oh, down in Provo, there's a whole warehouse full of people who are seamstresses or I don't know what the male version of that is, but they're just sewing stuff. And so we'd call them up. Can you make us pillowcases? Yeah, we can make you pillowcases. So I think if you're here in the U.S. Or if you're somewhere else, don't be afraid to start in the country that you're in.
Yeah.
It will be more expensive usually, especially if you're here in the U.S. But a lot of times you can go see them face to face. Like a lot of what I learned, and I think a part of the process I like learning about new things. Like at Color Run, I love learning about I knew all about the different street sweepers that we would use to clean up afterwards. And so we all knew like what model was best and what you needed. With foam, like walking through those factories, they would just give us information. It was like, oh, this is how this is made. And, you're like, why does that have so many scraps? Oh, well, this is why, that happens. This is this machinery that we use, but there's also this machinery. And so just get out there. And again, do it because you're passionate about solving the problem.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. I had a product brand started in college. It was back when FBA was much more doable.
Yeah.
But I did Alibaba, and it was really simple. It's a good way to get something in your hands.
Yeah.
It's almost a guarantee you'll be ripped off and you'll be posted on. So you have to be careful. But even if it's like, hey, I have an idea, here's something similar, let's tweak it for prototype purposes and then go find factories after once you prove viability. But there's a million ways to do it. You just have to get started.
Yes.
So that's smart.
Totally.
Okay. So I have the same 7 questions I ask everyone. I'll kind of rapid fire these. We can go quick through these.
I'll be fast.
But excited to hear your answers to these. So what are your top 3 pieces of advice you would give someone that's starting a business today?
Oh man,
it's the hardest one of the 7.
Be very careful how you create your cap table. You can't take equity back, so be really, really thoughtful. Along with that, don't just start a business with the people that you were sitting with when you had the idea. I noticed that a lot. Like people are like, why are the 4 of you? Well, he was at lunch when the 4 of us were at lunch when I had the idea. And so we just started it together. So I think cap table's a big one. Second one is really know the unit economics of your business, whether it's a software, whether it's a product, whatever it is, really understand, how that single product, like of a pillow or of a shirt, what has to go to ads, what has to go to the cost of the good that's created, what has to go to overhead, like understanding that and trying to think through any new business we start or help with. That is like kind of the first thing we're thinking about. Can this make money? And what is that model? And then I think kind of the third thing would be standardize your time and your pay. So a thing that I notice is a lot of entrepreneurs, when they get to the end of the month, they just take whatever's left and they put it in their bank account. And instead I would say, pay yourself something, set your salary, and don't tie it to just the profits of the business. That will also make it so you can eventually replace yourself, because you can eventually say, hey, there's a salary set aside for what I do.
Yeah.
Same thing with time. I notice a lot of young entrepreneurs, they think that the purpose of entrepreneurship is to not work. And so they are living this kind of 10-hour a week, and their business is kind of stuck. And it's like, dude, just come to work. Like I work. I am not I hate when people are like, oh, I work 100 hours a week. Almost no one works 100 hours a week. I work 45, 50 hours a week, every single week.
Yeah.
I take a couple weeks off every year, but I am at the office Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single day.
Yep.
And so I think if you just standardize your pay and your time, it'll really help. So
that's awesome. Okay. If you had $5,000 today to your name, you lost everything. You had $5,000.
Yeah.
What would you start to rebuild your wealth? What business would you start? Where would you put it? What would you do?
Yeah. So, some people might disagree. I would say if I was starting over, I'd go kind of the same methodology. Start a service company first, then products, then software. I think service businesses are easy things to get going. I started creatively with no investment.
Yeah.
I just went and got
It's
clients.
your time.
Yeah. I took what I was good at and I developed some skills around. And so if tomorrow I had $5,000, I'd go start another agency and just go sell my time. And then as quickly as possible, get an employee. Because employees are how you multiply your time.
Yep. Great advice. What is the worst investment you've ever made?
Well, worst investment.
I'll give you best next, but we're starting with worst. We'll end positive.
Yeah. Oh man, worst investment. I started a company that was essentially like masterclass, but for influencers. And we were just like 2 years too late. And it just was like, just past kind of, again, I think there's like trends. You got to really think about stuff. And I didn't realize how much people were kind of getting over the whole masterclass idea of like $100 for a course, even like Udemy. And I think a lot of those, it's not the gold rush it once was. And so I think you always have to be careful. And then it took us too long to launch and get going. And so we kind of saw like, oh, there's a gold rush going on with content. And we were there like 2 years too late.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one. What's the best investment you've ever made?
That's a great question. Probably, I would say like creatively was the best because it got me to where I could start my own brands.
Yeah.
Like it really freed me up applying some of those principles I said earlier, setting my time, setting my pay. It allowed me to then get to a point where I had enough people that I could hire a CEO to run creatively. And then I could say, I now can work on what I love, independent of whether I go to that office every day. Again, I'm still going to a office, but I didn't have to go to that office every single day.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's the best return because that's what I want. Like I love starting things. And so that got me what I wanted.
I mean, I told you before, we run social media like a business. We track our analytics all the time. The content I love creating is about investing in yourself and business and everything. It is also my worst performing content. People just don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Every person I have had on this podcast that is hyper successful, it has always boiled down to some sort of investment in themselves.
Yeah.
People want to go buy crypto and do some penny stock and gamble their first $5,000, $10,000 away. But the best money you will ever make is spending $5,000 to $10,000 on yourself, whether that's starting a business, education, something to increase your rate of return that you can get over your life.
Yeah.
And I hope people finally listen to it, even though they hate hearing it.
To that point, when I started creatively, I started getting clients and I was like, okay, I've never run an agency before. And I ran across this guy from Australia who'd started a bunch of successful agencies that have sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. And he had a course where he's like, I'll share everything. You're not going to talk to me personally, but it was all of these videos. And it was like, I will teach you everything of how to build an agency. And it was $6,000. And I was like, dude, that's, like I've made 50. Like that's a lot of the money that I have right now. Yeah. But it was the best thing I ever did. And because it was so expensive, I watched every single second. I rewatched videos over and over. And that course was amazing at helping me understand the business of like running a service agency. But at the time I was like almost sick to my stomach. Like, okay, if I don't, like $6,000 is like most of what I'm paying myself each month.
Yeah.
And I don't have like this stable of clients. Like I gotta go find work tomorrow. And so I was staying up late watching them at night. But like you said, it was an investment in me and it paid off. So
that's cool. Okay, last question. What industry are you most excited about to invest in outside your industry? Where are you putting your money?
Great question. I only put money in startups, honestly.
Really?
I'm like so bullish on startups. So, but like if I think more on, if I'm focused more on like physical products outside of physical products, one that I think is kind of dying, and maybe that helps me think about the one that I'm most excited about. One I think is dying is like services for consumer good companies. I think everyone's so tired of being pitched and everyone feels like it's too much. So that's one place that I think you got to be really careful. But at the same time, if you can find a software, it's kind of like both for me. The thing I'm most cautious of, but when it hits, is probably like software that solves big pains for a lot of brands. I think Redo here in Utah is like a great example where those guys just went in and were like, there's like a huge pain around returns.
Yeah.
For Nike, for
Yep.
down to the smallest consumer startup. So that's one of the ones that I'm like probably the most cautious in, but I'm also the most excited about, because if you hit it right, it's like, and it spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
Like because everyone in consumer knows each other. There's not like 50 million brands that are doing real numbers.
Yeah.
It's a pretty tight knit community. So once something comes out and people are like, hey, this does have the impact, I think that's kind of the feeling that I was trying to explain was there were so many people pitching and everyone's like, well, 10x your business. And like so few of those things had a material impact on the business, but the ones that do go so big so fast.
Interesting.
It's crazy to watch those where all of a sudden you're like, dude, this group was tiny and now they're massive.
That's cool.
So maybe a weird answer, but
no, I like it. That's awesome. Thank you. This has been fun. It's fun to see so many different industries. Dumb it down for someone where, I mean, everything you said today could be applied to someone on Saturdays and
I hope
weekends.
so.
You know what I mean? So hopefully people take stuff from that. If someone wants to reach out to you, get in contact with you, what's like the easiest way? Instagram, you know what I mean? How can someone get in contact with you if you want
to? Best way is probably LinkedIn.
Cool.
Instagram also works. But yeah, reach out. Happy to talk to people. We're actually working on a product of like trying to test some things around mentoring people and helping people launch ideas. So if anyone wants to be a guinea pig on how to launch ideas, reach out. We'd love to talk to them.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and make sure that you subscribe so you get notified for future podcasts because we have a lot of fun guests coming.